When choosing what to eat, many people find themselves standing at the supermarket deli, comparing the labels on packages of beef sausages and hot dogs. The common assumption is that hot dogs, with their processed meats, sodium, and various additives, are by far the less healthy choice. After all, we hear so much about the dangers of chemicals, preservatives, and excessive salt in processed foods. But the truth is, when we look closely at the nutritional profiles and the actual health impacts of these products, the story is more complex. In many cases, sausages made from pure beef with very high amounts of fat, especially saturated fat, can be significantly more harmful than even the processed meats found in many hot dogs, unless those hot dogs themselves are also extremely high in fat. Let's break this down. First, it's important to understand what's inside a typical beef sausage. Many sausages marketed as pure beef are actually composed of about 30 grams of fat per serving, a significant portion of which is saturated fat. To put this in perspective, dietary guidelines generally recommend that adults consume no more than 20 grams of saturated fat per day. By eating just one beef sausage, you're already reaching or even exceeding that limit. And that's just in a single meal, not accounting for any other sources of fat you might eat throughout the day. Why is saturated fat such a concern? Unlike better types of fat, saturated fat has a strong, well-documented link to a number of serious health problems. When you consume high levels of saturated fat, it raises the level of low-density lipoprotein, LDL cholesterol, in your blood. This is often referred to as bad cholesterol because it builds up in the walls of your arteries, making them hard and narrow. Over time, this process leads to atherosclerosis, a key risk factor for heart attacks, strokes, and other cardiovascular diseases. Fat is also a common link to many types of cancer, and saturated fats are very likely of causing deadly cancers, especially for people above the age of 50. But the risks of a high-fat diet, especially one rich in saturated fat, don't stop at cardiovascular disease or cancer. Studies have shown that diets with high saturated fat intake are also associated with a higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes, leukemia, and fatty liver disease. Fatty liver disease, in particular, has become increasingly common as people's diets have shifted toward more high-fat foods. In this condition, excess fat accumulates in the liver, eventually leading to inflammation, scarring, and even liver failure. Similarly, high levels of body fat contribute to insulin resistance, which can develop into diabetes over time. Cancer is another major concern. While the link between dietary fat and cancer risk is complex and influenced by many factors, there is strong evidence that high consumption of saturated fat and red meat increases the risk of many forms and types of cancer, especially colorectal cancer. The mechanisms are still being studied, but it's believed that saturated fat may promote the formation of carcinogenic compounds in the digestive tract and increase inflammation throughout the body, both of which are risk factors for cancer development. Now, let's consider the typical hot dog. Hot dogs are usually made from a mixture of meats, often pork, beef, or chicken, combined with fillers, preservatives, and flavorings. They are often high in sodium and may contain nitrates and other chemical additives that, when consumed in excess, can also contribute to health issues. For example, high sodium intake is directly linked to hypertension, which is a major risk factor for heart disease and stroke. Some additives, like sodium nitrite, have been linked to an increased risk of certain cancers when consumed in large amounts over time. However, The key difference lies in the fat content. Many standard hot dogs contain less fat per serving than a typical beef sausage. For example, a regular hot dog might contain around 10 to 15 grams of fat per serving, with saturated fat making up a smaller portion of that total. While this is still significant, it is often much lower than the fat content in a pure beef, yet high-fat sausage. This difference in fat content means that, for many people, choosing a regular hot dog over a high-fat beef sausage may actually reduce their overall intake of saturated fat and therefore lower their risk for the diseases associated with it. Of course, not all hot dogs are created equal. Some varieties, especially those labeled as jumbo, all beef, or gourmet, can have fat contents that rival or even exceed those of sausages. In these cases, the health risks are similar, and avoiding terrible fats while keeping other foods in moderation is the key. But in general, the average hot dog on the market delivers less saturated fat per serving than a typical beef sausage. To be clear, this is not to say that hot dogs are a health food. Their high sodium content and the presence of chemical additives mean that they should still be enjoyed only occasionally and in strict moderation. Excessive sodium can cause high blood pressure, increase the risk of heart failure, and even lead to kidney problems. Chemical preservatives, when consumed in large quantities, may also have their own health risks. However, when compared strictly on the basis of fat content and the resulting health risks, beef sausages with very high fat, particularly saturated fat, are often the more dangerous option. What's the takeaway from all this? When making choices about processed meats, it's not just about avoiding chemical additives or sodium. The amount of fat in your food is a critical factor to consider. High fat, notably high saturated fat foods like certain beef sausages, are strongly linked to some of the most deadly health conditions we face today, including heart disease, stroke, diabetes, fatty liver disease, and several types of cancer. While sodium and additives are not harmless, the sheer amount of saturated fat in some sausages makes them, in many cases, the more serious threat to your health. If you're looking to make healthier choices, always read the nutrition labels. Choose products with lower total fat, and especially lower saturated of trans fat. Consider alternatives like lean poultry or plant-based sausages or hot dogs, which can offer similar flavors with far less fat and fewer health risks. And, as with all processed foods, enjoy them in moderation, balancing them with plenty of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and other nutrient-rich foods. In the end, understanding what's really in your food and how it affects your body empowers you to make choices that support a longer, healthier life. So next time you're faced with the decision between a beef sausage and a hot dog, remember, it's not just about what's processed or what's pure, but about the fat content and what it means for your long-term health.